Another area in version 8.4 where there are new features is the table item, which is now called cssGrid. And the reason why we renamed it, it's basically cssGrid. It's just exposure of the beautiful cssGrid functionality. So naming a table was kind of a mistake here. And it can do a little bit more, and it gives you a little bit more help than the last version. So when you take it, and very important, this thing is not bound to the advanced data wraps. It is very helpful in the advanced data wraps, of course, but you can use it with any elements, and you can use it without any data wraps at all. So taking that on the root level here, putting a headline in here, maybe removing the margin of the headline, we'll place it in a grid. And what you see here is immediately that the grid gives you an orientation where it is. And that's what we call the inspector grid. And it's a little bit what the browser is doing when you hover over it in the debug mode. And it's extremely helpful to see where the grid actually is. So this is a new feature here, grid lines, and you can actually use the inspector mode. And inspector means you only see this grid in the preview. Once you have the final page, this grid will disappear and it's invisible and simply not rendered. But you also could have things like horizontal or vertical styling for first or even or odd rows if you want to display a design a table. Inspector by default on, extremely helpful to understand what's going on with your grid, because the most complex thing is that you normally don't see what the grid is actually doing. So let me paste 4 of these headlines and you will see that now we got a new row and we got another one. So when we go in here now, put the group in here and give it a background color, we can see it. And even if it has a background color, we don't see anything. And this is because the group has no height. So we could now give the group a height here, but we also can go to the grid and change the basic settings for all cells to stretch. We also could set the settings for just this cell to stretch, then it would actually fill out that. So we see now much clearer where this box is going. And since the grid has a horizontal and vertical grid gap, it not attaches and not goes to the next cell. So we can actually remove that by putting 0 in here, and now the area is actually filling that. If we tell this area to use instead of 1 but 2 rows, it will not do much because we don't have any empty rows here. But if there is more, which forces the grid to create more rows, then automatically this is actually extending to two rows. But we also could say it should go via 2 columns. So we will see that as well. And it gets much easier and clearer now by seeing the grid. And also what we can do is another feature added here is the feature to define the rows manually. Normally in data mode or with form buildings, you might let the system create auto rows. So there's where we have the auto row height. So we could say every new row that you create, it's always 200 pixels. That's fine. But you can also say, if you plan some complex layout tasks, the grid is extremely powerful and helpful. So you could say, okay, my grid should also have 4 rows and let's say 4 columns. Very simple. So we can even go here and remove a couple of this stuff here, which is maybe not helping us too much. So now, of course, there is nothing in. The grid doesn't get any height, which we can change, and by giving the grid a height, let's say the grid should actually be our complete page. So sometimes you have to press reload, especially if you change the height of the grid itself. Then the inspector grid sometimes is not completely refreshed. It normally refreshes every time, even on every size change. You will see actually how it changed and how it actually also switches between tablet and mobile here. But let's say this is our start, and in the start, we can now say, okay, we want to have a small header. Let's say we have a header in our layout. So we can go here and for tablet, we define a row and say the header row is 50 pixel. Then we got it's a small one up top here. So let's put this one just in the header row and maybe have a column span of 4. So that's our header. Now we can also say, okay, then we got the main area, which could be 1FR. So it actually spans the entire page. And in the third row, we want to do something like a footer with 100 pixel. So maybe we need only 3 of them. So that gives us quite a nice layout here. And the same we can do with here. We have, let's say we take a distance of 50 pixel to the left and 50 pixel to the right. And then we get a 2-column layout left over in the middle of our side layout. And so let's put this one in the footer. So different color for the footer. Let's take gray and just place this in row number 3. And I know it's not row span. We want to take row number 3 for that one. So we got this in our footer. And the content area, easily we can actually span also a group here or another grid, for example. And the content area should start at, again, always taking the column span instead of the column number. So row should be 2 and row span is 1. Let's give it a background color so we can see it. Let's take the red one. And now we can also increase the column span to 2. So that's our basic layout. You can imagine that we can put the logo over there, that we have a footer. And it's really interesting to build layouts. And even if then it comes to it goes to mobile, how they change, that's extremely nice to do. So the grid is an extremely powerful tool. For my opinion, is the best thing that HTML and CSS3 ever have invented. And if you got that chance in your life to only learn one element for web design, just stick to the cssGrid. It's supported by every browser and you can do an awful lot with it. So thanks for listening. That was about the updates for version 8.4. Have fun and please give us feedback what we can enhance and where we should work. Thank you.